Good afternoon. Thank you very much for taking time out of your lunch break to be with us here on Tech Stage. My name is Josef Lentsc. I will be your host and facilitator for this session. It's great to be here in Vienna in the very beautiful City Hall. I hope you are enjoying your time at the Impact Days and the Art Festival. I came from Berlin yesterday, traveled to Munich, and I'm actually from close by Vienna, so happy to be back, and also very much happy to be back with a great panel that I will introduce to you now. To my very left is Nóra Schultz, who has come by train from Budapest this morning. Nóra is a political consultant and media worker from Budapest. She's an advisor to an opposition MP in the Hungarian National Assembly. She hosts a bi-weekly politics podcast and also writes a Substack on political theory and current affairs. And she will talk with us today about how tech and data can be and are being used in the fight for Hungary, in the fight on the opposition side against Orban. And so I'm very much looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your updates on what's happening. Stateless is one of the organizations that is involved in that fight, and we're very much looking forward to hearing from you. Welcome, Nóra.
Thank you.
Next to her is Jules Bruin. He's the growth lead at Dembrane. Dembrane is a Belgium-based startup that turns hours of talk into actionable insights by building AI for in-person citizen dialogues and assemblies. So Nóra will talk about the campaigning side of political tech. Jules will talk about the deliberation side of political tech. Dembrane is, for example, working with the European Commission and some other institutions and organizations and doing really a lot of interesting things in transforming democracy to a more, we heard, participatory but also more deliberative mode. So welcome, Jules, great to have you.
Thank you.
And to my left is Mathias Lipp. Mathias is the founder and chairman of AI Empowered Politics, which is an association that is based in Vienna. With his work, Mathias bridges politics, technology, and society. Mathias will kick us off today after I've given you a few introductory thoughts along the way. So Mathias will open up to this afternoon's panel by sharing some perspectives, case studies, examples of how AI impacts, empowers politics. We don't want to take the merely dystopian view today. We also want to take a more pragmatic and perhaps even positive view of what tech and what digital can do for politics and for democracy. And Mathias will speak to you about that in a moment. Before we get things going and I hand over to the speakers, let me just give you a bit of a brief introduction, because some people may ask, political tech, what is he talking about? What do you mean by political tech? Well, to us, political tech is the space between two more established fields. One is civic tech, and who has heard of civic tech in the audience? A few have heard of civic tech. So this is about empowering citizens with digital tools, participatory budgets, fix my street where you can let the city know that there's a problem, that there's a pothole in your street. Those kinds of tools that empower citizens to be more effective in democratic governance. That's civic tech. On the other hand is GovTech. GovTech is about digitizing government. As you might have seen, Germany now has a new ministry, right, for digitalization. So they will be very much looking at GovTech. How can they use technology to make government more efficient, more effective, quicker, more responsive? This is the GovTech question. Now, in between, this is where organizations like political parties live, but also unions, associations, political advocacy organizations, some institutions as well, who mobilize, who organize, who campaign. And this is what we think of as political tech. It is a bit of a gap, it is a bit of an uncharted space, but we want to actually build that space out, and this is why it's great that we're here. We think of our target group as about 1 million people worldwide, about a third of them living in Europe, the other 2/3 living in other countries around the world. Those are people who work as heads of IT, heads of tech, heads of campaigning in those organizations that I just talked about. We brought the community together for the first time in January at the Political Tech Summit, and Jules was there, and Mathias was there. Hopefully Nóra's at the next one, which will happen in January 2026. We brought together 600 people from 40 nations, had some great partners, also some big tech partners, but also lots of smaller startups from across Europe, and we really were very proud how it all came together. So I'm happy to say, and hopefully you pencil in your calendars, probably on the 24th of January 2026, we'll announce it soon, there will be the next Political Tech Summit in Europe, in Berlin. These are some snapshots, and if you want to join us, you can do so very easily by scanning this QR code today. It's free, and we hope that you find it interesting what we have to report to you on our website, on our weekly newsletter. That's it with the advertising. I now want to hand over to Mathias. As I said, we'll open the floor. Of course, we will have all three talking about political tech from their perspective for about 25 minutes or so. And then if you also want to come in, hopefully, you can prepare your questions. I will then hand over to the audience so you can ask and comment and, of course, contribute your thoughts. All right, Mathias, you have a background in, I think it's already on.
Yes.
Very good. You have a background in politics. You are now, in a way, a political entrepreneur. You have founded AI-empowered politics to understand, to study, to distribute AI, digital innovation in politics. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your organization, and what you're actually working on in terms of political tech?
Thank you, Josef. Yes, hello, my name is Mathias Lipp. I'm the chairman of AI-empowered politics. So we are a think tank and platform and help political organizations to use artificial intelligence in their day-to-day life. And we are built on two pillars. So one is the research pillar, where we do research projects with university and government organizations. And the second pillar is more research and consulting and education pillar, where we do workshops and project development together with political organizations. And yes, I have a background in politics for 5 years. In the end, I was deputy director of the NEOS Parliament Club, but originally I have a data analytics and a little bit a data science background. So I was working in data science for several years, and that's the reason why I'm always was interested in how to use technology to make government more efficient, to bring politics and people closer together. And like it says in the name, we are working a lot with artificial intelligence and also analyzing, okay, what's the potential of artificial intelligence in political organization. And we were mentioning what can AI do in political organizations, and I start a little bit before what could do. Since 2003, we see a huge wave of media coverage about new algorithms, new platforms, and how could AI transform politics and businesses in total. But if we take a little bit a closer look on the statistics and numbers, that we see that the implementation rate of artificial intelligence in political organization and the economy in total is quite low. So in German-speaking countries, we speak about 20% of implementation rate of generative AI. And most of these are tasks what ChatGPT could do. So we, on the one hand side, we have a huge technological potential, but the real implementation rate is quite low. And that's not the reason because of the technology. What I saw in my work, it's mostly artificial intelligence is a change the organization. So it's an organization transformation of the organization. So artificial intelligence is less than a technical tool like a new email program. It's a new colleague what's part of the organization, and therefore we have to understand, okay, what kind of problem we really want to solve in the organization, what a person or in the day-to-day life we couldn't solve. So what's the strategy behind that? What kind of data we are using. The data question is quite crucial when it comes to automatization. And then also, how can we educate the workforce in political organization in order to use artificial intelligence effectively? And what I see the most potential, and I think you will speak about more about that, it's everything about automatization. So what kind of things in the political organization I can automate. And I see the biggest potential in political organization. It's content creation on the knowledge side, and also on the media and communication side, and how to collect and adapt the knowledge in the organization as a knowledge-based system.
Thank you. So you say automatization, content creation. We already see, if for those of us who are on LinkedIn or on another platform, I think we can already see there's a growing quantity of Gen AI automated content. I think you can still spot it to a certain degree sometimes. There are certain patterns, right? But I think, of course, the systems will get smarter, so at some point you won't be able to differentiate between generated content and actually written content by people. So where do you see this going for political organizations? Not just parties, also others like unions, associations who are catering to their members or mobilizing in the public sphere. If you look ahead for the next 1 to 3 years, what will we see next, and what will this change? You said it will be transformational for organizations. So how will this be transformative?
So you're mentioning this content creation of LinkedIn, and of course I used it several times, and I still use it for the content production. And you see it quite. It's quite easy to see if you post something on LinkedIn with artificial intelligence, was written by ChatGPT or a human. And I think artificial intelligence also brings the quality back in political organizations, or especially in the content production. But we saw that we have a high volume of content what was produced by artificial intelligence, but that we already see it in the consumption of social media, that people don't want to see that. So people are interested in qualitative content, in personal content, and I think artificial intelligence could give and can give unions the time to find that out, and to do some other things in automatization, in the content production, one step further on a knowledge management system with artificial intelligence. So I think technology gives us the possibility to make more time and to more use of our time, and that I think that's the biggest potential.
Last follow-up question. I've heard people say that now that you can train models, if you feed models good data, then can actually, of course, accelerate progress, which potentially could mean that much smaller parties, for example, with much money, can progress much more quickly because they can hyper-personalize content and so on. So do you think this will also change or be transformational for political landscapes? Do you think it will lead to more smaller party, for example, with lots of money breaking through and changing the political markets?
Just to define it from a technical perspective, so you have the possibility to use ChatGPT in your organization, then you have the possibility to adapt or specific algorithms on your data, and then you have the possibility to train a specific model. And to train a specific model is really, really expensive, and I think you really have to you need to have a solid data background. And for that, I don't think that's I don't see it on the landscape that this will be state of the art in political organization. I think it's more, and also we saw it with DeepSeek, that it's getting way cheaper to build bigger models. So it's more how to use the current infrastructure, what's out there in your organization.
Thank you. Nóra, speaking of political parties and political campaigns, you were involved, as I said, in Hungary. You are advising an opposition MP. You're also of Stateless, one of the organizations that is active in Hungary and elsewhere. Can you give us a little bit of an insight? What is happening? How is data being used? How is technology being used in campaigning in the fight for democracy?
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm working in a district in Budapest, which is a lower middle class district, which was led by Fidesz, so Orbán's party's MP for 12 years, and we've managed to flip that district 3 years ago now. And I think the resources that we used were very limited, and they were not very techy at first. But then we really had to realize that, in order to be able to use our 400 activists to their maximum potential, we need to find some good, low-cost tech solutions to prioritize which polling areas we go and canvass, knock on people's doors. I know that's a controversial political tool in some parts of Europe, but in Hungary it's very prevalent. We do go and knock on people's doors, and it's one of the biggest and best mobilizing tools. And so we had very limited resources, as I've said, and we've been able to develop a dashboard that integrates our electoral data, so electoral data from past elections, just basically deciding which areas are more for the opposition, more for Fidesz, and then we've been able to integrate our CRM data, our contacts into that as well. Very few CRM systems in political parties, I find, are able to, prioritize door knocking and canvassing. They are mostly for communication and fundraising, and less so for or maybe calls for call centers, but they are less so for on the ground campaigning. So we've been able to integrate our CRM contacts, our addresses, and then also our progress tracker on how far we've been able to, go through the district and knock on people's doors. So I think, having these decision-making tools when you are a low-resource organization and you really want to have a productive and well-done campaign, I think are super important. Having tools that are not subscription-based, that are not taking a cut of, the fundraising that you do or the contacts that you bring in. I think having those solutions is super important, and also developing them with an eye on the actual work that you are doing. So in many cases, at least in the Hungarian landscape, I found that, US-based consultants come in and have their own approaches, or some Western Europeans might have their own approaches. So I think having your personalized tools in political tech is also super important, because it has to fit the country's culture. And for example, in Hungarian political culture, door knocking is one of the things that we do. So having the tools prepared for that, I find has been really super, super helpful, and I think it was the key for our success against, as I said, in Fidesz in this district in Budapest.
Thank you. So tech, digital tools have really made a transformational difference how you organized yourself. Now there's the saying, a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? So if you put basically somebody in front of a great tool, but they cannot use it, what nothing good comes from it. So can you give us also a bit of an insight in terms of training, in terms of capacitating the people? How did that happen? How did you enable the people to actually use that tool and not be a fool?
Yeah, I think that's super important. I found, or at least in my background, I'm coming from progressive grassroots organizations, and there's a lot of skepticism about using tech in politics. It's somehow seen as the tool of the master when we are trying to dismantle the master's house. And one of the things that we had to, push through is make our activists understand how valuable this is, but also not to burden them with the tools that we are using. So our the thing that we are developing now with Stateless, as you mentioned, is primarily a decision-making tool for coordinators on the campaign who might be paid. And then those who are volunteers on the campaign, they can just go on and do the work that they've been doing, put in, the addresses where they already knocked on the doors. They can upload the signatures and the contacts that we are collecting on the ground, all GDPR compliant, of course. And the dashboard is for the coordinators. So I think it's also super important if you have an activist-based, volunteer-based campaign to have the tools help them and motivate them. So for example, if you have a good dashboard with up-to-date daily, refreshing data, you can motivate your activists very well with that. You can say, okay, this is how much we've done in the past week. This is the team that's been doing the best. So, you can award them, motivate them. It is an organizing tool as well, not just a get out the vote and, win this election. So I think especially for grassroots organizing, if you are not just trying to win the next election, but you are trying to transform something deeper, I think it can be super important to, make your team understand what is the work that we are doing and motivate them throughout the campaign.
Thank you. Speaking of the next election, of course, Hungary will soon face a very crucial election. So the same question as for Mathias, for you, looking ahead to the next 1 to 3 years, what do you think is the next frontier when you think about those tools that you mentioned, to mobilize, to canvass, to target voters, and so on? What do you see as the next frontier that will be addressed?
Yeah, so I think, as I said, I think this door-to-door campaigning is super important because one of the myths in Hungarian politics is how strong of a database Fidesz has and how much of maybe an illegal database or illegally detailed database they have, etc., etc. And what we've been seeing more and more recently is that their database is, good for approaching those supporters who you already have, and they might have paid campaign workers knock on select doors in a city or in our district. This is what I've experienced, that they go to select voters. But the tools that we are building and the activist-run campaigns are much better at actually getting to a complete community. We are not going to select doors. We don't have that kind of database, perhaps. But because we are able to prioritize our resources and go to those polling areas that are super important to be able to flip certain electoral districts, it's been much better at actually engaging with people. We go to them 2 or 3 times before we ask them to vote. So we have actual conversations. We are not just there to get their votes, as for example, maybe the Fidesz campaign that is now operating mostly with paid campaign workers is able to be doing. So I think, the combination of having your database online, offline, having your tag, but also very much building on a volunteer-based mass mobilizing campaign, I think is going to be key for the opposition in Hungary.
Thank you. So good luck with that. It's a bit, as we heard, like Goliath against David, right? In terms of the resources, of course, but as we heard, tech can make a difference also for smaller parties, smaller movements. And if somebody is here from a political organization, not just a party, but also perhaps a union association, an NGO, would love to hear from you afterwards and get your thoughts on what role tech and digital does play for you in your professional life. We heard about the transformation of politics, we heard about the transformation of campaigning. Now we hear how tech can help to transform democracy. As I mentioned, Dembrane is an organization that is accelerating the innovation when it comes to deliberative processes. Jules is the expert for this. I will hand over this clicker to you because you brought some slides. So looking forward to getting your thoughts and your pitch on how AI and digital tools can help transform our democracy.
Perfect. Hi everybody. First of all, really excited to be here. Thank you, Josef, for inviting me to the stage. I brought some slides to make sure that my story follows a structure, because I know sometimes I can go all over the place. But with Dembrane, I'm active as the growth lead at Dembrane, and at Dembrane we're building really easy to use AI tools to listen to your stakeholders during in-person discussions at scale. I know that's quite a long sentence, but it will become clear what we're specifically doing when we're going to the case studies. Why are we building tools to listen to stakeholders? Because it's just really important for democratic participation, and it is really important that democratic participation works, especially now. We are facing complex challenges. Legitimacy of politicians, to be honest, is in a little crisis, and we are seeing a society that is super polarized and super fragmented. And what do we see with a fragmented society? That it becomes even more difficult to find common ground. We need collective buy-in in initiatives, and the more fragmented we become, the more difficult this will become. How do we actually see that democratic participation is broken? We see some symptoms, not just of democratic participation that is failing, but to be honest, a democracy that is failing. We are seeing historically low voter turnout in Western society. We see a big trust deficit from citizens in public institutions. We see often when new policies are implemented that the response is just major backlash. And to be honest, lately I'm more surprised when election goes normal than when it turns extreme. And we are not the only ones that are trying to fix this. Also, the European Commission and European Union really sees that it is not just a challenge, it is a mission-critical challenge. They are pushing to improve democratic participation. And why specifically? Because participation is a major activating component of democracy. It is like fire that needs oxygen. Democracy needs input. And therefore, all around Europe, initiatives are being launched. In several member states, there is legislation being passed to make participation mandatory. We also have recently the launch of the European Democracy Shield. You should definitely check that initiative out. It's really cool. And then we also have another initiative called the Horizon Europe project. And we are part of the AI for Deliberation project that is part of that initiative. And first of all, what is deliberation actually? Deliberation is a form of qualitative participation, and it's a fancy term that I like to use because then I look very smart. But what is it actually? It are just dynamic group discussions where real conversations happen, where, for example, stakeholders come together in dialogue moments and they don't just say what they want, they don't just scream what they want, but they also have a conversation about why they want these things. And actually, in a lot of cases, we all want the same things. We, for example, want that we have safe streets, and often the what and how we want to become this is just politically tinted. Then the downside of deliberation is that it is very labor intensive. So we have different tables, for example, in a room, and there needs to be a moderator to moderate these discussions. There also needs to be a note taker to make notes of these discussions. Hence, also a lot of data is being created. And often it is so much data that we can just, to be honest, not manage as a person. It's just too much. But wait a minute. AI is very good at these things. AI is very good at processing large volume of data in a very, very short time. So therefore, we asked ourselves, can it help? And therefore, with 13 partners, we are researching and developing AI to support deliberation at scale. In 2026, we will have nationwide pilots where we will be using our AI tools. First of all, we will have a nationwide dialogues through to Italy on the climate change adaptation plan. We will have one nationwide in Greece on draft legislation, online on long COVID, and then in Germany we'll have a city-level deliberation in the smart city of Bamberg. And then specifically, what do we do? How do we contribute to this project? We are building on top of our tool, Echo. And as I just previously said, you have a lot of these tables that have a discussion and there is a note taker. And to be honest, it is just very inefficient. So what do? You can create a project, you get automatically a QR code, you put this QR code on the table, and a participant of that group scans a QR code, presses start recording without needing to download any apps, just it's on the private internet. And when they have their discussion, their conversation is being written down word by word. So therefore you capture all these concerns, you capture all these suggestions, ideas. Then what you can do of all these different tables, this data is being put in like a pool in a bucket, and you can make instant feedback loops. You can make instant reports where people can give feedback on. For example, people can validate things that are in the reports, but potentially also falsify. Like, hey, I didn't meant it in this manner actually. Can you please change it? Then you press update, and they get an updated version of the report. So therefore you have very short feedback loops. And then for the organizer, you actually have a dashboard where there are recurring themes, recommended actions that you can take, or also, for example, things that people are negative about, and an overview of things that people are positive about. And actually one of the most interesting things that I think that we can do with this is we actually create a digital twin of these stakeholders. For example, you can put in a draft legislation and just ask, hey, how will this be received? And then based on all the conversations, you know how it will be received. So a little bit more practical, because I promised Josef that I will also have some very practical examples. The first case study is actually a municipal multi-year plan of a city in Belgium. It's named Genk. And since 1988, they have embedded participation in all their processes when it's possible. So only when they can really leverage participation. And the interesting thing is, since that year, they have won all the elections as a center party. Let that sink in. As a center party nowadays, winning elections. So of course, in 2024, they once again won the elections. And their first reflex was, hey, we won it, but right now we also want to get input from our citizens. So they organized dialogue evenings, they organized home visits, citizen councils, where they recorded these conversations, where they had conversations about themes such as safety, housing, but also, just to be honest, a feedback on how do they perceive the municipality. Yeah. 2 minutes, 1 minute?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, all right. And then what did they do? They just used Dembrane to get very fast answers on these questions. And they could generate reports really easily, they could write them really easily, and they could also include relevant quotes to these reports. And this may sound silly, having relevant quotes, but it really brings you closer to the person that said these things, instead of having just a bullet point that you read in a report. But when we zoom out towards society, when you just have citizens and government, you have citizen participation. When you zoom out, you have more actors within society. For example, knowledge institutions, you have associations and companies as well. And it's there where policy making comes in. You want to make sure that all these stakeholders are aligned and that there's buy-in. And this is another case from Belgium, and I swear that we're active in 9 countries, but these are just interesting cases where legislation is being created that will affect rural Belgium. And you have dozens of stakeholder groups with competing interests, but you also have a significant risk of major backlash. So what do they do right now? They organize moments where these stakeholders can come together. They record these conversations. They create these instant reports where they can give feedback on. And they also use AI to identify common ground. And that's exactly the reason why we founded Dembrane, a democratic membrane, a digital twin of your stakeholders, so that of those that will be impacted by a decision, no idea is lost, no concern is lost, and every voice is heard. Because you used a democratic Dembrane to shape your decisions. If you're interested in using Dembrane for a specific project, let me know. We were project-based, we're easy to use, and we're trusted by 100 parties in 9 countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, if you want to learn about how to design a deliberative process because you are working, for example, for the city of Vienna or another public institution or the parliament, then talk to Jules after the panel. If you want to learn about how to transform your campaigning with digital tools and tech, then talk to Nóra. And if you want to learn how to transform your organization with AI and digital tools, then talk to Mathias. All right, this is the point where we hand over to you. I'm sure there are a lot of people in the audience that have experience with using digital tools, with tech, perhaps even AI, in their organization, in their communication, in campaigns. Who wants to share a thought, who wants to share a reflection, or perhaps ask a question of the panel? Thank you very much. The icebreaker, much appreciated. Please, do you want to tell us who you are? And
yes,
share
absolutely. Thank you so much for the discussion and for the insights. I'm Dr. I'm here with Impact Europe, but I'm coming from a little bit with a comment rather than a question. So we are obviously in the hype of artificial intelligence, and I would essentially plead to everyone involved in working on the tech side not to treat it as an artificial intelligence, but rather as an amplified intelligence, because I think that us as adults, as voters, as citizens, and people who are using all those solutions, we still have the traditional muscle that makes us capable of understanding the input that we are getting from the algorithms. However, the new generations, if they're going to be brought, fast forwarding 30, 40, 50 years, just making sure that us as a human race, we still keep this ability to analyze data and to use AI as amplified intelligence, not as a replacement for human intelligence.
Thank you very much. Before I get to the next question, Mathias, you already have the mic in hand. Do you want to reflect on that?
Yes, of course. I think one of the most points I see in political organization why they don't use artificial intelligence, because the people are afraid that they get replaced. And I think one of the most important things I say, it should help you as a person and not replace you. And I think also when you look on the statistic and the labor market, artificial intelligence will not replace people, because you still need the human in the loop to make the decisions. In most cases, technological does it, but I think also to use it and also to let your team use it, you need to understand that it's a helpful assistant and not a replacement. And I think if you understand that, then I think the success rate in order to implement it effectively are much more higher. Yeah, but I give you right. Yeah.
I'm not afraid of the replacement.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of us losing the muscle.
Then losing the muscle, to be not so, to lose the muscle to make decisions, to be less creativity. I think there was an important study of that. I think we can talk later on. Of course, yeah, that's a potential risk we are facing. And what are the best possibilities in order to overcome it?
I think we all have the vision of WALL-E in front of our mind's eye, right? Where basically people float around and everything else is being done by the computer. I think there was another question in the front. Thank you.
Can I maybe respond
Yes,
a little bit to your question as well? I think it's a very valid remark, and that's also the reason why we always say, hey, we are creating human-in-the-loop AI, because the output of AI is a 95%. It's good. It's just better than how I could potentially do it. But you need to be critical for these 5% where it goes wrong. And that's also like why we have these feedback moments, that they can still check out the report and say like, hey, but actually I didn't meant it in this way. And I think it's a very, very valid remark actually, that you always need to stay critical of the output of AI.
Thank you very much. Please, tell us about yourself and what you have to share.
I'm Nóra, from partially Vienna, partially from a strategic and small advisory company on international and impact strategy. We love AI, we use digital tools, we try to use ChatGPT bot system to create our own internal bot for strategy by feeding its own our own internal documents and making sure that it's going to be accessible only to the team, and to hope that it's going to enable everyone else to access the internal documents, and basically an intern could ask very easily and understand like, okay, what's our strategy, what's our look on this and that. So that was a pilot and experiment. Deliberation process, everything amazing. Question is, how do we make sure, or are there only initiatives that we don't know about, to make sure that the AI itself is also a democratic process? Because we know that AI currently belongs to not the most democratic companies out there, and they have their ownership. So we can be jumping in and creating systems, and they're going to be helpful and useful to us. But in the back of my head, my question is, if tomorrow ChatGPT decides to do something else on policies and agreements, they do it. It actually happened once. I was working on one of the research programs within my paid account, and then suddenly couldn't continue working because it told me I'm out of the limit, which surprised me. And then I kept asking the system, okay, can you give me any official guidelines on telling you, so what is in my contract and how much can I do it? The system kept telling me like, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't tell you, because that's currently the design of the system, right? And using it for parties or anything else. I mean, it's like similar with Instagram. It's an incredible source of income and an incredible support for a lot of freelancers who build businesses with it. But we also know how overnight, when company changes regulations or how advertising or anything else digital is being done, people lose incredible amounts of income, right? But they're also powerless to act vis-a-vis Instagram.
So I mean, we know, right, that at the moment, for example, the way AI gets trained, it's not democratic in the sense of that it disregards IP law and stuff. I mean, there's just been a new report been published, actually by the US, a very good one on how this could change, right? How so there are ways to modify it. How do you see it play this out? I mean, there's another movie I have in my mind, which is Terminator, right? Where then suddenly Skynet develops this awareness, self-awareness, and then game over, right? So I mean, this also relates to the first question, I guess, which is this kind of anxiety of, so how do we control it, right? How do we keep the off switch on in there, right? Or is there some point where we just can't switch it off and it just becomes protect itself? Dystopian view, right? I mean, what's your take on this? How can we protect ourselves in that phase?
I'll go first. I also have a background in computer science, actually. And what you see with AI models is to really dumb it down, that they all demonstrate different behavior because they have different system instructions on how to operate, for example. And what I do believe is right now you see a lot of open source movements, a lot of new models being created, and you will have almost like a model that you tailor towards each specific use case. You will not have a one-size-fits-all AI model, for example. You will not be capable of using ChatGPT for everything, but potentially you can use like a variant of ChatGPT for a specific use case, or use an open source model because it's better suited for the objectives of that use case. Hopefully it provides a little bit more information about how I see it actually. We have.
But who finances the open source models? And who finances the open source models?
Well, that's also a very good question. I think what we're seeing right now is in Europe, for example, Mistral, Hugging Face, like the European alternatives, they're really focusing on open source, and the commercial ones, they are going quite closed source actually. And I do think what we see right now is we have a shifting community. People are not that big of a supporter of OpenAI anymore. It became like a dangerous company. And there is a lot of talent, especially in Europe. And I do honestly believe that a lot of this human capital will flow into the right initiatives. And I do believe that open source is the right initiative that we should focus on.
Thank you. So those are some of the dystopian visions, also, of course, that we have to face up to. However, as we're taking or trying to take kind of a pragmatic and more optimistic view, are there any people in the room who have an experience to share with using digital tools, using perhaps also AI in their jobs, perhaps political jobs, please? There's over there, yeah. And we have 5 more minutes, so one more question and then we have to close up. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jan and I work as a data scientist in the medical field. I've been using AI as a co-pilot in programming for a long time now. And the overall trend that I kind of noticed when working with these tools is, at first I really saw the power in also educating me. How do I do this? I was able to absorb information. I think that's the original idea of internet. You have access to a lot of information, you use it and you benefit from it. But over time, AI just become the new standard in making things faster for me. So instead of using AI as a tool that educates me, I use it as a tool to give me the answer right away. So the overall trend that I see in society and in personal life when programming code is I want things to be faster. And to the point that I'm questioning, at some point AI can do what I'm doing right now. Where is my position in this field? So while I like what you're doing, I really appreciate it, and I think we need to use AI and tools in a way that supports people instead of replacing them. The question for me remains, how do we bring back the human part and maintain it? Because the world spins faster and faster, and just by listening faster to the people, we might not really hear the right question behind it that people have. this is, I also think, why grassroots campaigns are so successful, because they reconnect with the people. And we shouldn't make the same mistake. So I'm really grateful for what I heard. Still a little bit pessimistic, but I would like to hear what you think about how do we prevent this of things just speeding up faster and faster.
Great, I think it's a great thought. Thank you very much for contributing that to close the session. I think what we heard today, we can use AI certainly to be faster, but we can also use AI, and I think both Nóra and Jules and also Mathias talked about that. We can also use it to develop not only a faster, but also a kind of, in a way, a deeper politics and a deeper democracy. And I think the crucial factor is the human in the loop, right? Because at the moment, and what you said, I think a lot of us are doing that. You outsource stuff, right? You get the answer and then you run with it. But I think the interesting question is, and this is, I think, what your use cases spoke to them, is so what can you do in actually not just be quicker, but actually be richer in the discussion, feedback it into the debate, have people comment on it, have activists use that kind of data that they get. I think this is where the potential is, if we are cautious to not just make it a kind of a, give me that and then I run with it kind of approach. And I think this is where the music is. And that's again, back to what Mathias said. This is back to this is back to organization. This is back to culture. This is back to we use AI to get more and not to replace stuff with something else that we would have gotten otherwise. I think this is a very, very interesting one. So thank you very much for your contributions, for your thoughts, for your expertise, for taking the time. Thanks again for taking time in the lunch break, and looking forward to continuing conversation now off stage. All the best. Have a great conference. Thank you.